You're very welcome along to the Matchbook NFL podcast. It's week 12. The season is literally flying along. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, and I'm back and delighted to be joined by Judah and Doug once again. And Judah and Doug are smashing it out with the best bets. More of that in a minute. But it is important at the start of this podcast, at this week in the UK and Ireland is safer gambling week. Now, rather tell you, there are a lot of tools available on the Matchbook website. But rather than me ramble on a little bit, Judah, yourself, and for people listening, what are your triggers, or do you keep records, or what's your best way that obviously you can't have a winning week every week? So what sort of things do you sort of keep in mind to stay in control throughout an NFL season?
Yeah, I think a couple of things are very important. Number one, to just kind of detail exactly what you're betting, know how much you are winning and losing, and kind of set well before you actually enter into the NFL season an amount you are willing to lose and never to exceed that. And to obviously bet within your means. And the other part is that I don't think we should lose sight of the fact that betting on sports, for the most part, should be fun. Right? A lot of what we do here is for entertainment. That is like the nature of sport in general. And I think that we should not lose sight of the fact that this is supposed to be fun. If it's adding stress to your life, if it is causing financial trouble, it's probably time to kind of step away a bit and reflect on why you're betting and what it's providing for you. So I just try and keep that in mind always, of betting within my means, being kind of structured and understanding that if this isn't fun anymore, it's probably not worth it. And if it's causing real financial loss, then it's probably time to kind of step away and reflect a bit.
No, absolutely, Judah. Well said. It is, I guess, Doug, keeping fun at the forefront of everything, but there's no issue in taking weeks off, days off, whatever you can, and just staying in control and having that number in mind throughout a season that you're willing to lose or can afford to lose.
Yeah, I think that's extremely well said. I think one time, just given the access we have from a technological standpoint, it's really hard to, sometimes maintain level head when it just requires such a little couple quick mouse clips and you're in the throw of things and very impulsive, or just everything instinctual and stuff like that. So just things to keep in mind, like, rules of thumb, if you will, is, bet what you can afford to lose, not what you want to win. That's something that I always tried to maintain over the years. And like, even just in general, just like with, we are victims of FOMO as gamblers. It's like the biggest thing we hate is like, oh, I wanted that bet, I did. Just relax. Like, there's a lot of other bets you didn't make that lost. And I say this as someone who does not have a computer model. Like, the computer model is a nice, unemotional teammate that you can lean on. It just kind of keeps you sort of centered and unemotional. But if you don't have that, you just have to remind yourself, like, if you like a side or love a side, all whatever words you want to use, there's plenty of really respected bettors who feel the same way on the exact opposite of the bet, so against you. So just keep in mind that you sometimes just can't see the forest from the trees when you're in the middle of it all. So just kind of take a step away, like you guys were saying. Like, you can even take time off and things like that. But just when you're in the heat of the moment, just remember, like, there are plenty of scenarios where this goes awry, and for you to just remind yourself that there's plenty of other options the next day, so to speak.
Absolutely, yeah. That FOMO thing is a good point, actually, because like you said, if sometimes I've been watching a game without a bet, of course I would have gone with that side, but obviously there's plenty of other bets you wouldn't have done. Safer Gambling Week running throughout the week in the UK of Ireland. Plenty of stuff on the Matchbook social channels, but do check out our responsible gambling part of the Matchbook betting exchange. All tools and how to help you keep and stay in control are available there. Now, the 4 games we're going to cover this week: 49ers, Packers, Cardinals, Seahawks, and then Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football. Keeping it fun, a lot of good games coming up. Insights.matchbook.com, you get a full recap. And I touched on the best bet records. Doug literally has walked into the podcast week 3 and has just kept winning, no defeats. So definitely jinx that there. Full recap of all the guys' best bets that they've done so far. Just check out the Twitter/X account. We've tweeted out the records there. Well worth looking at. Some great run of form. So we're definitely due a bit of variance, unfortunately. But let's start with the 49ers at the Packers to take a look at the betting we currently have on matchbook.com. Really looking forward to this game. Niners 2.22 underdogs in Green Bay, who are 1.76. Niners get a 2.5 head start, and 47.5 is the total. Judah, the 49ers, every week you watch them going, probably should have won that game. Seahawks, they had them bet lose the game. I mean, they can't afford to lose any more games.
That's you would think so, and you would think that this Niners team, which has been kind of so dominant in the red zone and can't score touchdowns, all of a sudden, I think that's probably variance, right? There's no reason in particular, I think, to suggest that this year relative to all the other seasons, they should struggle more. It's mostly the same cast of characters. I think Brock Purdy's playing better than he ever has. And we I would use kind of the larger sample of what this Niners team with largely the same cast has done in previous seasons rather than the smaller sample of this year. So I do think they're kind of bound to regress. And this game was a little bit different, I think, than some of the other ones of just like they were not up by 2 scores and ultra conservative. In fact, they were relatively aggressive with 2 minutes left and the ball up. They were throwing on play action on second down and they just could not execute on the play. That happens. Well, there are going to be high leverage plays, and sometimes you're going to make them, sometimes you're not. To this matchup, I think it's a particularly interesting one for various reasons. And at this point, there are some major injuries, I think, to note. Jair Alexander was questionable coming into the game. He played a couple of snaps last week, left at halftime not to return. He's, I think, questionable at best. And Nick Bosa also. The Seahawks did not score with Nick Bosa on the field in any drives. He leaves. The Seahawks start to produce some offense. He seems extremely banged up in the NFL. You never know when guys are going to gut through it, but I think these are 2 key injuries. And on the Packers side, they've increased their rate of playing single coverage and man coverage, meaning relying a bit more on the talent at cornerback. And the results have not been great the last 3 weeks. The Jaguars had their best offensive day of the season. Chicago was passing all over them. Detroit, the 2 weeks before that, before their bye in week 10. This is a defense which has struggled, and I think a lot of their kind of production metrics, if you're going to look at something like EPA, is really boosted by a lot of turnovers that they forced earlier in the season, and when those have dried up, the results have as well. So I think when you look at it, the Niners are assuming George Kittle comes back, and he's massive not only in the pass game but the run game as well. I think the market is overrating a bit the Packers defense. It's not a strong take, I think, just because there are injury concerns at this point on Wednesday. But I think the Niners are still the better team. The defense of the Packers is not what it is kind of pressed in via efficiency metrics. And I think the Niners are just bound to regress or progress, I guess, given the larger sample of what we know this Niners offense is capable of. And the underlying numbers are still terrific. They're kind of some fluky red zone problems. And I think the Niners are still the better team, even though they're underdogs in this one.
Okay, yeah, 2.22 you can get. Hard to believe that a few weeks ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago, when Packers were having a mid-season slump. Doug, George Kittle, that's a big loss for the Niners last week, that he will be back. Does that impact your thinking to maybe not go for the Packers here, but rather than the team total?
Yeah, that's my whole thing. And I agree with everything Judah said. It's a really fascinating handicap because this Niners team kind of knows. I mean, for the first time all year, they're now significant favorites to miss the playoffs, around minus 250 kind of thing. And they're become long shots. So even despite this on and off sort of performance is hot and cold, the first 5 weeks or so of the season, they were the NFC favorites. Then the Lions, but they were still kind of round. And now they're long shots. So it's like the market is corrected or finally caught up to their inconsistent play or poor play. And it's a bizarre team across the board just because the last 5 years, they have found a different way to deliver pain to their fan base, right? So they get to the NFC Championship game a couple of years ago, but they don't have a healthy quarterback. Last year, they lose in overtime the Super Bowl. They lost the Chiefs in an excruciating way a handful of years ago. Then they missed the playoffs with a bunch of injuries. Then they lost an NFC Championship game to the Rams when they had the fourth quarter lead. So they just find new ways to be excruciatingly painful. And then now you have the McCaffrey injury, the inconsistency. They blow a game because they don't have a kicker and can't score after halftime. So it's just gotten to a certain bizarre situation. Now, I will say if Bosa's out, my gut tells me he's not going to play. This defense was very different without him. They held Seattle to 6 points through 2.5 quarters. He goes out, and then Seahawks rip off long touchdown drives back to back. He's that big of a sort of factor. Now, you mentioned, guys, the offensive weapons coming back and things like that. I think the Packers are going to get their points. I keep waiting for this breakout performance. I thought it was going to happen last weekend off a bye, and Jordan Love was going to be healthy and all that stuff, and they were going to be crisp. But they had some red zone and kind of knucklehead behavior. I like the Packers. Sorry, I like the Niners first half ATS, but I like the Packers team total the most. I think they can sling it against this Niners defense. And I mentioned the Bosa injury, and there's some theories with. Remember, Robert Saleh's now an advisor, whatever you want to call it, to LaFleur. He kind of knows this Niners defense, things like that. So maybe he can advise in that regard. But I mean, we got to talk about like the crazy handicapping angles. Like, how do the Packers respond after the emotionally lucky win last week? I don't know. So I kind of, that's why I like the Niners first half. I think they're going to be hungry and kind of more. I mean, this season's on the line, but ultimately, I think the Packers are going to get their points.
Yeah, the old Rob Mazzola saying we bet real dollars on this, and fingertip
back weeks too.
Back-to-back weeks, the Chiefs Broncos, and then obviously last week sensational. So I had no skin in the game for that moment, and even I was like this. So I can only imagine you poor bettors out there if you won or lost based on that field goal. But yeah, let's go for we Packers team total over 23.5 currently on Matchbook for Doug, and then the Niners money line, the bet there for Judah. Really looking forward to that game. Massive game for both teams. Cardinals at Seahawks. I picked this game out because these two teams are on a bit of a roll here. Cardinals 199, slight underdogs to the Seahawks, but yet they're getting a -1 on the point spread. Shows this is essentially a coin flip. The total is 47.5. We'll go back to you, Doug. I mean, not often you get an out-and-out 50-50 game. I mean, this could literally be 50-50, even on an exchange like Matchbook come kickoff, which is so exciting.
Yeah, I believe we've seen a favorite change a couple times in this game with early money in the week. So who knows what's going to happen the rest of the week. Sometimes when these situations, when it's like a 1.5, if you can get that, like sometimes I like to tease it up because you're just getting extra line value in theory from a 1.5 to a 7.5 when maybe the team should be. So if like it's Seattle -1.5 ever, it's like, all right, now you can do something with that plus 7.5 if you can get -120 on the juice for that teaser. But I lean to the under. I think Seattle, I just talked about it, how they kind of took advantage of the second half against this Niners defense. Arizona is a tough place to play. I've been to this stadium a couple times. I think the offense can get going against Seattle, and obviously there's weapons. It's not my favorite play, but I think there's a chance this thing stays under. So that's why it's just a mere lean. 47.5 is a big number. So that's where I sit on this game. But yeah, I'm fired up to watch it. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, absolutely. And for you, Judah, it's ultimately a no bet here, but just quickly set up the game and what was your thought process to ultimately just staying and watching this bet? I mean, we've talked about Safer Gambling Week already, so you don't have to bet in every game, but what were your sort of factors here and ultimately deciding to leave this game alone?
Yeah, I think there are so many unknowns about. I'll take a step back even, right? Usually at this point of the season, we kind of know the team's identities. We know who's good. We know who's not. But oftentimes, or sometimes I should say, you get situations where there's a lot of kind of early season noise. Things are changing, whether it's like certain teams with rookie quarterbacks that are getting better, or teams entering new schemes who improve, and you kind of have to quantify like how much to do with this change. And I think the Seahawks and Cardinals are both teams that I think there's a lot more uncertainty about how good they actually are, and than kind of any regular team you'd pick out in Week 12. The Seahawks start the season with this great defense, but it looks like they're playing some poor opponents. They get absolutely shredded, but it's also coinciding with some of their injuries. Like basically every player on their defense has missed time effectively this season. Now they're healthy, and it's kind of a question of like, well, how good is this defense? Don't really know. I think there's a really wide range of outcomes here. And on the offensive side of the ball, they get DK Metcalf back. They're healthy. They start the season as this kind of extreme pass-heavy team. They're leading the league in pass rate over expected. Now they start to kind of be a little bit more balanced. They're running a bit more. And on the Cardinals side, this is a defense which has been great over the last months of the season. Is it a small sample? Maybe, probably. Is it a reflection of where they're going? Also a chance. And the kind of pricing this change, I think, is particularly difficult. And there's nothing that really stands out matchup wise about what these two teams do that I think is kind of tilting me to either side. I would just say it usually in kind of these high variance spots, I like to attack the tails. I just have like no inkling of where that's going to be. And I would not be shocked if either team won this game by 20. I would not be shocked if this game was 2017. I would not be shocked if this game was, there's so many ranges of outcomes that I'm ultimately going to pass, but is I think maybe the most intriguing game on the slate to watch as we kind of learn a bit more about these teams. And I'll just say, if Arizona comes out with a big win here, I think there are going to start to be some rumblings about this team as a legit contender, especially if the defense performs well. And Kyler Murray's having a terrific season, and I think he can maybe get some. He'll enter, I think, into that MVP conversation perhaps with a big showing here.
Okay, yeah, it's opening up MVP, but also the playoff picture as well. I think this is the most exciting part of the season, just before the last couple of weeks, So no bet ultimately for Judah, but a lean to the under in this game, 47.5 at 194 for Doug. Let's move on to the Eagles at Rams. We're going Sunday night football here, another big game. And take a look at the betting that we have on matchbook.com. You can currently back the Eagles 1.75s on the money line with the Rams at 2.4. The Rams are getting a 2.5 head start. 48.5 is the total. Judah, take it away here. I mean, this game in LA, both teams massively, as I said, need the win. Rams are currently available at 2.4 on the money line.
Yeah, a huge game, obviously. I think just looking at kind of this game's hanging out right around 3, and then obviously on the money line reflecting that. I think it's a lot of points to the gap between these two teams, and the Rams offense with Kyron Williams, with Puka Nacua, with Cooper Kupp, and Matthew Stafford has been the best offense in the NFL over the last 2 seasons. And you kind of get this interaction of like what I think is an elite offense. And this Rams offensive line's also gotten significantly healthier over the last bunch of weeks. They've returned 2 of their starters. Also, you want to talk about offensive line continuity. That is a real phenomenon as these guys kind of get more acclimated to each other. We tend to see offensive line play improve. So I think on the margin there, but it's a real interaction between an Eagles defense, which has been the best in the NFL over the last 6 weeks. And they've kind of had a couple of rookies, especially at corner, really emerge. Quinyon Mitchell has been dominant. Cooper DeJean has maybe been the best slot cornerback in football this year. But I'm not sure that matters when you go up against an offense like the Rams that I think is probably the most underrated unit in football and is going to kind of lead me to them, at least relative to what the market's implying. I just see this as a team that is averaging like 7 yards per play with these guys on the field with a success rate above 50%, an EPA that would be the best in the NFL. We have a pretty decent sample of this. And the Eagles also are particularly, I guess, the matchup matters more for Jalen Hurts when he's facing pressure or not. He's creating a lot of pressure for himself by virtue of holding onto the ball for too long, but also has been one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL when he's not kept clean. Now, returning Jordan Mailata has been massive for them, and they can also kind of rely on their run game, but the Rams have been top 5 against the run for the last 2 months of the season. If they can't get that going and they're forced into obvious passing downs, you're going to get Jared Verse and a surprisingly good Rams pass rush going up against the Eagles offensive line that is a little bit shaky. I mean, their tackles are great, but Hurts is creating a lot of zone pressure. And if the Rams can kind of continue to generate pressure as they have a bunch in recent weeks, I think it can set up the Eagles for a couple of spots here. So I think that kind of offensive matchup also is a bit tilted towards the Rams, I think, just by this is an Eagles team which is so different than what they've been the last couple of seasons. They're really relying on their ground game this year. And if the Rams can stop that, obviously it would not be shocking for the Eagles to continue to break long runs. But all of that is to say, I think they're a little bit more variant and vulnerable just because of how reliant they are on explosive runs. And then also they're as a low volume passing attack, they're really reliant on a couple of those explosive plays, which of course can happen in any game, but is a little bit less stable, I think, than other elite offenses that they are kind of priced in in the market.
Okay, yeah, 2.4 as we said for the Rams money line. Doug, any concerns on Eagles potentially not being able to get that run game going against this Rams defense?
Yeah, the schedule's kind of broken their way the last couple weeks, and they've looked, I don't know, better than they should, or they've just really just capitalized and started with Washington catching them on a short week and just some other things. But I also think they might be fresher than most teams. But I agree with you. This line concerns me as a guy who's invested in the Eagles from the futures market. I'm worried about this game, but I think the Eagles are going to get their points. I think this offense is pretty explosive. They're undefeated with AJ Brown in the lineup, and Barkley is a true weapon right now. And actually, Judah mentioned Kyler Murray, some MVP love at 35-1. There's some 65-1s out there for Barkley, and I just wrote a 500-word story that it's going to post at some point about why Barkley has value right now. I just think the season is lining up where some of these quarterbacks. The Bills have to stumble. Obviously, Josh Allen is deservedly the favorite. He will win unless Buffalo loses a couple more games and he spirals. But I think Barkley is such a force. And when you factor in him, A.J. Brown, and even Jalen Hurts, sort of dual threat, it's a really difficult offense to prepare for. And I think it's going to come down the wire. I wouldn't lay it. I think it should be closer to pick 'em, given that the Rams are healthy and all those weapons that Judah alluded to are healthy. But I think the Eagles will get their points. I think they can thrive. I think offense is their calling card, and they have such big playability with Barkley and some of the wide receivers that I'm going to go over with their team total. I think that they're just fine. And then you put them on the fast track and in a dome stadium in LA, I think we're going to see some points on Sunday night.
Yeah, over 23.5 is the team total. So Doug, not just Barkley MVP, what other Eagles futures have you got? Have you got all the way up to the Super Bowl or division, or where you at?
Yeah, I think they were kind of under the radar when the Niners were struggling. This team, again, undefeated with A.J. Brown, like if they can get some home field, that weather in January, obviously they probably are going to have to go to Detroit, but Detroit's got some tough games already. You never know. But the NFC East is also sort of unraveling, right? Like the Cowboys and Giants are down to backup quarterbacks. Washington may be hitting a wall or kind of coming back to earth a little bit. And they've already beaten them once on the road, so they just get them at home. So the Eagles could win out in the division, right? So you get that, and they have 3 tough games, so to speak. This starts with this Sunday, then they host the Ravens, and then at the Steelers, over the next 7 games, not in a row. So they could conceivably finish, 6-1, 5-2 sort of thing. So they're going to be right there in the mix. So that's why I was kind of invested in, because the NFC, once the Niners started stumbling, it's wide open. There's a drop off from the Lions to the Eagles, but I think the Eagles are the second best team.
Okay, yeah, you can see somebody's done his research when he knew the schedule like that when I came to him.
But I also have the Rams. I also have the Rams about 25-1 to win the division. So before, coming out of their bye when they had before they played the Vikings on that Thursday night.
Yeah. Okay. So you can't lose in this game, but maybe you can't win is the other side. But we'll lock in a team total over 23.5. Depending on if you like that matchup or not, the way Judah likes the defense matchup versus the run on the Eagles, you might want to play the money line instead. 2.4 feels like the first game, maybe both those bets might land, lads, but this game it definitely feels one or the other on that one. Maybe we'll get a shootout, who knows. Let's move on to Ravens at Chargers, and it is just great to talk about Chargers in the main state and great to talk about a good Chargers team. The Ravens 167, Chargers 2.4 underdogs. More on that in a minute. The Chargers getting a 3-point head start. 49.5 is the total. But might throw this back to you, Judah, to Chargers Bengals game. I mean, what a superb game. And Chargers, they threatened to do a bit of charging. I did see your tweet, Doug, on who would is it charging versus maybe the Bengals falling apart with Joe Burrow and his cast falling apart around him. But anyway, take it away on the Chargers first of all. As Jim Harbaugh, I did think it was noticeable that Chargers could have ran the ball a lot in that second half, but decided to throw the ball, pass the ball. Is he trying to look ahead to, if you want to win these big games long term, you've got to probably do the plus EV plays constantly versus maybe his approach at times would be run heavy?
Yeah, I mean, I think the it's just like crazy concept of keep the ball in your superstar quarterback's hands and try and let him win, as opposed to letting it up to some variance with I don't know, average running backs in the NFL. I think an encouraging sign for sure. I think that Justin Herbert's healthy, which we really have not seen a lot of throughout his NFL career. I think I guess to go on a little, Justin Herbert, I don't know, side note, right? This is a guy who comes into the league. He takes the league by storm in his rookie season. And it's like, oh, Shane Steichen actually might have a lot to do with that. He's had a ton of success as a offensive coordinator for the Eagles, and then has definitely outproduced the talent on the field with the Colts. And he's just hurt every year. The Chargers just like don't have any weapons around him. And now all of a sudden, Ladd McConkey looks like a legit NFL receiver. I mean, Herbert's elevating tons of these guys, and he's finally healthy. He's scrambling all over the place. It is certainly encouraging to see. And the reason why I like them in this matchup is you get Justin Herbert has been the best quarterback in the NFL by far from a clean pocket. I mean, you can look at any metric and it will tell you he's basically the best in the NFL there. And it's not hard to see why when you're, watching Sunday Night Football last week. If the guy is just throwing absolute dimes from clean pockets. And the Ravens have had no pass rush this year. They're bottom in the league in virtually any metric. They certainly have kind of lost Mike McDonald to the Seahawks, who was able to simulate so many pressures. And that's kind of the main angle. The Ravens offense is a house. There's no denying that. Lamar Jackson has been playing absolutely out of his mind this season. I think he can mitigate the Chargers' defensive advantage, which is like a defense that has been really good all season. I'm less worried about that, but I think Herbert can go toe-to-toe with him. And 3 points at home, implying a kind of 4.5 point difference, I don't think is kind of reflective of the reality of these two teams, especially when considering that Justin Herbert is as good. You have as good a shot to hit on a Herbert ceiling game against a team who you can project to have a kind of weak pass rush. And that's what the Ravens have. And that's kind of the main matchup angle I'm looking at. 4.5, too many points on a neutral between these two teams. And especially given the matchup angle here, I'll be on the Chargers.
Yeah, and you say lean Chargers, and when you'll be on the Chargers, Judah, you're an alts man, but it sounds like you'll be taking the points at home here, +3.
Yeah, it would. I think I would go money line if I were to bet it here, if not some alts. Yeah.
2.4. That's already a money line treble lining up there in the main games for Judah, whether he likes it or not. Niners, Rams, and the Chargers, all dogs at home. Doug, take it away here, and more on my Chargers. We don't get to talk. This might be the ceiling for the season. 7-3, but I thought and Judah touched on it, McConaughey's interview with Justin Herbert alongside him, how in awe he was of this guy. I mean, you look at the stature of him, 6'6". I mean, it's great to see him healthy again, but it feels like his weapons this year have so much respect for him, and they're slowly starting to make things happen on offense.
It's a nice reminder. When I was growing up, I would be a sports fan and yell at the TV on certain things. Like, turns out that these teams don't know what they're doing, right? Like they would always pull the trump card. Oh, well, these guys are experts. No, they're not. They were completely archaic with their fourth down decisions and things along those lines, their game theory, their game management. And then over the years, they've gotten a little better, but they continue to make stupid mistakes. Then they draft poorly, right? Like Herbert went like 6th, right? The Giants drafted an offensive lineman ahead of them. Dolphins drafted Tua. It's just ridiculous. Here's this guy who's sitting there, prototype quarterback, everything you want. And then in the last offseason, like Harbaugh, is he a little strange? Yeah, but I don't necessarily need my football head coach to be normal in the boardroom. I just need him to be good on the field. And I don't know what more the guy has to do as a head coach for teams not to be lining up for him. He's sitting there for the Bears, I think. I don't know everything, but obviously they had their number 1 pick and have a good franchise quarterback. They could have, Harbaugh's a former player. Like there's all these reasons to go get Harbaugh, and some teams are passing on him. Now, maybe he just wanted Chargers and declined, but he was sitting there for a while. So I just don't understand some of these franchises and how they operate. But yeah, it's as a football fan, I'm psyched that Harbaugh, sort of the quarterback whisperer, unlocked Colin Kaepernick, 10 years ago, whatever it was. He now has Herbert, and they're playing well. And it seems like the Chargers in a groove. I lean to the over in this game. Like in pick'em leagues, I'm definitely taking the dog. I do think the Ravens will bounce back. They played pretty poorly last week. And Chargers is as dominant as they looked in the first half last week. They kind of still make some bonehead plays. Both teams, the Bengals and the Chargers, botched the start of their 2-minute drill. Just one team had to win. And, they were just head scratching plays. Like the Chargers didn't complete a pass till that final drive in the entire fourth quarter. So just a lot of botched play, but that happens. No one's flawless, but I lean over. But yeah, definitely on the home dog here. I think it's the wrong line. This Ravens defense has some holes. And I think the Chargers showed last week that they're willing to take the training wheels off Herbert and not just be a run-heavy team.
Okay, let's lock that in. Lean for over 49.5. Expecting a good game, Doug. And Judah is with the dog here, leaning Chargers money line. Insights.matchable.com, full recap of all those guys' picks. Let's move on to the long shots. And Judah, your long shot this week is the Raiders money lines. This is going to have to be a good case, I would say.
Yeah, I think that the Broncos offense certainly is like extremely overrated. And there's a lot of hype around Bo Nix. Especially he played a great game last week. I think it was the perfect setup against the team that cannot generate any pressure whatsoever. Nix also has some pretty drastic splits, whether or not he's kept clean. And the Raiders pass rush has been chugging along. This is a team that is second in the NFL in quick pressure rate over the past bunch of weeks, and Bo Nix has really struggled with that. It is a lot of points for an offense that basically has been bad for most of the season, and like got some upgrade over the last couple of weeks. The Broncos defense is terrific. The Raiders offense, for what it's worth, has been solid over the last 4 weeks. Gardner Minshew's had a positive EPA per game. Like, not even positive. He's been like well above average each of the last 4 weeks. They're getting the ball to Brock Bowers. They can move the ball even against a tough Broncos defense. And at the end of the day, it's a huge margin for what I think is a very overrated Broncos offense right now, and has to deal with a lot of quick pressure, which is an area that their quarterback has really struggled with all year. And they can't run the football. They haven't been able to run the football all season. It is too many points, and I think implied too strong of the Broncos and their kind of recent market upgrade.
Okay, let's lock that in. Raiders around the 3.15 mark versus the Broncos on the money line. And Doug, Panthers, the Chiefs. Everyone's expecting a hammering. You're expecting a Chiefs win, but there might be a bit of plus money on just expecting a one-score game here.
Yeah, I'm not ready to pull the trigger on the money line, but I am on the first half. I think this Chiefs team was, I don't know. I think the Bills wanted it more. If you want to use sort of like the cliches and stuff like that, you just saw some of the body language of the Chiefs. I think they understood like long term, it's probably better they lose and not just try to empty the gas tank. I just don't think they're going to be going to Carolina like fired up, ready to get back in the win column. I just don't think the Panthers brings that out of them. As a guy who handicaps the NBA, I see this happens. We just saw the Thunder back-to-back nights, right? OKC loses to Dallas. It's like, okay, they're going to get back on track here. And they just it's almost just like a continuation of the previous game. And we saw Minnesota last week in the NBA lose a few games in a row. Like, I just think Carolina off the bye, looking a little more confident. I think they jump on the Chiefs early, and I think the Chiefs are going to find themselves in a bit of a ball game. Remember, the Chiefs have been, some of this isn't just like effort. They've been playing with fire for a while, and they should have lost to Denver, did not, escaped obviously in that game because of the blocked field goal. They had the Bills ending. Before that, they played with played with fire with the Bucs. They barely get out of Vegas with a win, but they don't cover. The Niners game was like the last time they played pretty well, all things considered. So it's been sort of a team that's got like a gas tank in the middle, not on E, but not on full either. So I think the Panthers are getting healthier, I think, this week. I think they could hang around and look competent for a half.
Okay, 3.9 money line is the first half. Plus 6 is 2.8 as well, Doug. So they're alternative there. Best bets, Doug. Might throw it straight back to you. It's a game we've covered already, but you do like that Packers team total.
Yeah, and for all the reasons I mentioned, I'm just waiting for this Jordan Love breakout game. And he's off the bye, looked healthier. They're at home. This Niners defense is sort of an old animal that maybe need to be put down, just how banged up they are. It's time to put maybe the Niners away, but I think they can hang around and maybe win the game. I just don't want to lay the points, but I do think we're going to see some points out of Green Bay. I think Bosa's injury, I think he's going to be out. I think this Packers offense with all the different like Swiss Army knife, he can have the deep threats. He has the underneath. He has all the options. Like, he should be able to take advantage and capitalize. They can move the ball, and they're going to get some points here.
Okay, Packers team total over 23.5, and Doug hasn't lost the best bet since being with us week 3, so well worth tailing him, I would say. Judah, not a bad record yourself. Take it away with your best bet, mate.
Yeah, going with Miami -7. No all to this week. I think this is a massive mismatch on offense or defense for the Patriots against the Miami offense. New England plays a ton of man coverage, which is going to make them reliant kind of on their quarterback talent relative to the opposing team's wide receivers and man coverage more than zone coverage. We tend to see the better wide receivers beat lesser cornerbacks and vice versa. And they're not even having Christian Gonzalez shadow anyone. They're just leaving him to one side of the field. So Christian Gonzalez is covering Demarcus Robinson for an entire game as Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp go for over 100 yards. I think we've seen kind of a difference in style from Miami. The Tua Tagovailoa's depth of target is way lower. And I mean, Mike McDaniel has spoken at length about kind of how this is a reaction to how teams play Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and try and take away the deep ball. But they've had plenty of success that way. And I think that is a method by which they can continue to play. But also, this is a spot where we might be able to see some of those deep balls if they're going to be playing in one-on-one coverage, and you're going to get Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle on cornerbacks, not Christian Gonzalez, who are among the worst at preventing separation. None of the guys on New England, even Christian Gonzalez, actually have been above average in preventing separation. You've got a bunch of guys there kind of in the 15 to 20 percentile range. And this is just a massive mismatch. I think Miami should be able to run the ball if they want against the kind of mid Patriots run defense. And they've been passing the ball well. We haven't seen the Hill and Waddle games come yet, but I think this is as good a matchup and as good a spot for that to happen. And they can put up points real quick. I'll just say very quickly, but on the other side of the ball, I'm certainly a huge Drake May truther. We've been on the Patriots many times in recent weeks. I don't think this is a great spot. Miami has done a great job at the pass rush, which can mitigate, but at a certain point, when 40% of your plays are kind of blown up in 2.5 seconds, even if you are very good at mitigating that effect, the base rate of success is still so low. And the Patriots offensive line is so bad, and this Miami pass rush has been terrific this season. I just think this is a spot where Miami can put up a ton of points, and I don't think that New England's going to be able to follow. As we always say, points are a reflection of fundamental value, and they're real points in real games. And I see this as a pretty low variance spot for Miami to score a bunch of points. And it's going to take a lot for Drake May to continue to play hero ball and keep up with them.
Okay, yeah, the fact we've been on the Patriots, Drake May and Judas going against them maybe speaks volumes there. Insights.matchbook.com, full recap of all the guys' picks. Remember, it's safe for gambling week. If you're having a bet, make sure it enhances your enjoyment of the NFL, but please do so responsibly. We will chat to you guys next week. Bye-bye.